A ravaging war had been waged for the sole purpose of terminating one person. Yet, every attack hurled at him was deftly deflected until all his attackers lay dead. He crouched to catch his breath, but as he glanced sideways, he saw a girl standing there. Her eyes bore into him as she asked, "Why? Why have you done this? Why did you make a deal with the devil? Why did you betray them?" At the word betrayal, his expression shifted. "Wasn't it they who betrayed me?" he asked, his voice heavy with bitterness. But she warned him to stop spouting lies and to speak the truth. "When?" she demanded. "Did you turn into something like this?" Looking back, it had all started with the great crash landing. That was the day he sat hunched before his computer, having just conquered Inner Lunatic Part 1 by scoring 27 points in a single run. Around him lay crumpled papers, food wrappers, and a tub full of cigarette butts. He scrolled through his grand footprints, a list of in-game achievements he had attained. These included Falling Moon, putting an end to Nox von Lienhaber the Demon, a rose pricked by the sickle room, control the commotion after the Imperial Princess's death, and the sun is burning in the east, quell the rebellion of the Kingdom of Tahalin. He thought to himself that he had achieved quite a lot. Everything seemed to be going well. Except for one thing. He was going to die soon. The memory of his last medical checkup floated back to him. The doctor had told him his results were in. Although he had consulted 2 other facilities, the diagnosis remained unchanged. The doctor had recommended palliative care drugs and urged him to take them with caution. That had been 2 years ago. Hopeless and dejected, the bottle of pills slipped from his hands as he coughed blood into his palms. This was it, proof that he was nearing the end. But it wasn't the time to wallow in despair. A notification popped up on his home screen. He checked the time, 11:28 a.m., Saturday, February 4th. The notifications were all from University Hospital, reminding him, Chinyu, of his upcoming schedule. He realized no one had reached out to him since his memory had started to falter. He had no one to call. There wasn't a single person left whom he could rely on. Various brochures and pamphlets lay scattered across his table. Terminal Cancer Support Center, Faith Doesn't Make Sense, Miracles Can, and Beginner's Hospital Guide. One by one, he tore them up, crumpling the pages in sheer frustration. Just then, a new notification appeared on his screen. "Would you like to play a new game?" With nothing else to hold on to, Chinyu instinctively pressed yes. The screen prompted him to create a character. He typed in the name Car. Next, he was asked to choose character traits. He selected Ultra Sensitivity to Mana, followed by Genius Swordsman and Fighter. A warning appeared. Selecting more than one trait would incur penalties. 2 options appeared before him. Neutral, Unharmed, and Negative would give him with life-limiting illness. He chose the latter, noting how it eerily mirrored his real condition. When asked if he wanted to proceed with this character, he whispered, "Why not?" Suddenly, a blue light tinged with green burst from the screen, pulling him in. Was this death? He didn't think dying would feel like this. At the very least, he wanted to choose how and when he died. Moments later, he awoke in a luxurious bed, inside a lavishly adorned room. Rising from bed, he muttered that his worst nightmare had come true. He had reawakened, not as himself, but as the most hated and spoiled wretch, Nox, the youngest of the infamous Lienhaber family. He couldn't believe it. It all started with a crash landing, he thought again. This was the only phrase that came to his mind. The Lienhaber family, one of the 3 prominent clans aligned with the element of darkness, had 5 sons, Nox being the youngest. They were renowned swordsmen, all except Nox, who had earned the reputation of being mediocre. Eventually, Nox delved into dark magic, struck a deal with the devil, and became the most feared scourge in the Inner Lunatic universe. Chinyu, now Nox, was shown his basic attributes. He was 14 years old and had achieved nothing yet. Then came the stat bar. His expectations were dashed when he saw that his stamina was just 2. Next were his negative traits: life-limiting illness, curse of frailty, sickliness, cold hands and feet, and finally, possession. He laughed bitterly at the cruel joke life had played on him, dying in the real world, and now dying again in a game world. Why had he chosen this character in the first place? Maybe because, deep down, he already knew his end was inevitable. Suddenly, a new message popped up. "Welcome back." The sender asked whether to call him Chin or Nox, addressing him by the name given to him by his parents. This indicated that the sender knew who he really was. The message continued, saying he might not remember the sender, but his perseverance over the past 2 years had made it possible to bring him back to this world. The word stunned him. Back? Did that mean he was originally from this place? He asked the man standing before him if he truly meant that this world he had come to now was the real one, and the world he had left behind was not. The man responded cryptically, saying he couldn't reveal much at this stage. What Chinyu needed to do now was enroll in a Lydian academy, make friends, and decide for himself who could be trusted. Moreover, he had to follow the main storyline. If he did, he would eventually uncover fragments of the forgotten truth. The man then turned to leave, but Chinyu tried to stop him. Questions hovered on his lips, yet he found no opportunity to voice them. Left alone, Chinyu mulled over the situation. He was now Nox von Lienhaber, destined to become the final boss. If he didn't follow the story as advised, he would face dreadful consequences. The only memories he had were from the last 2 years, after his cancer diagnosis. Everything before that was a blank. This new life felt no different from the one he had left behind. He was doomed to die there just as he was here. But this time, he decided, he would do everything to recover what was lost and perhaps even survive till the end. He asked the system for the date. The response came, February 4th, 1812, a full year before his enrollment at a Lydian academy and, ironically, the same year as his expected demise. That meant he had been thrust into the 28th run of the game. Determined, he headed for the door, but the mere effort of pulling it open put unbearable strain on his wrist. His body felt pathetically weak. Yet, remembering the penalty traits he had chosen, cursed frailty and life-limiting illness, it all made sense. Even a fish would likely be stronger than him at this point. As he stepped out of the room, lost in thought, he didn't notice the maid approaching from the opposite side. They collided, and the utensils in her hands clattered loudly to the ground. An awkward silence blanketed the hallway. All the other servants froze in place. Chinyu looked down at the girl with tears glimmering in her eyes. He struggled to recall her name and finally remembered. Lona, a minor side character, not important in the grand scheme, but her sharp tongue had made her memorable. She used to gossip about him frequently. Once, she had even joked to another maid that Nox must be short for obnoxious. Despite himself, he found her odd innocence and her dove-like eyes strangely endearing. But now she was begging, pleading for mercy. She sobbed that it wouldn't happen again and begged him not to punish her with the splinters. Chinyu was taken aback. What kind of monster had Nox been that even a simple maid trembled at the idea of punishment? Softening his voice, he told her he'd let it go this time, but warned it shouldn't happen again. Then he walked away, leaving the hall in stunned silence. Summoning her courage, Lona asked if she might know where he was going. He replied casually that he was headed for the drills, causing yet another wave of shock among the onlookers. He then instructed her to follow him. Lona, horrified, assumed he meant to beat her with a wooden sword. In contrast, Chinyu was absorbed in thoughts of survival. To make it through this world, he would need to adapt. Having played the game 27 times, he knew its every nook and cranny. At that moment, he recalled the traits panel. Interlunatic Universe wasn't just popular for its rich lore of devils and divinity, but also for its unique trait system. Players could combine traits based on rank. Lower-ranked traits could be stacked, while higher ones were limited to 1, yet somehow, he had ended up with 2. It must be due to the penalty trait. Fortunately, the system hadn't kicked him out of the game, but had instead imposed severe drawbacks. His selected traits would at least help him. His Genius Swordsman trait would accelerate his mastery of white arms like swords, while Ultra Sensitivity to Mana would assist him in all magic-related endeavors. But he needed more. Traits like Perceptive Eye would allow him to read other stat windows. Gifted Actor would help him convincingly portray the cold, calculating Nox. Heart of Steel would aid him in life-threatening combat. Yet, the negative traits were devastating. Just stepping into icy terrain could cause him to overheat, and his frailty meant he collapsed by the end of every chapter. Meanwhile, Lona trailed behind nervously, still unsure if he was telling the truth about the drills. He reached the training room door and opened it while mentally focusing on the system report. A glowing window appeared. Frowny face. Curse of Frailty. You were born with a curse-grade delicacy. Your stat growth is half of what it should be. Your vulnerability to debuffs is twice as high. He stared at the description. It was exactly the kind of penalty he'd expect for a character doomed to suffer. But even so, this was his new life now. If he had to crawl his way forward, then so be it. Holding the wooden sword in his trembling hands, Chinyu felt the strain ripple through his entire body. The toll this simple drill had taken on him was far more than he'd anticipated. After just 10 turns, he was utterly drained. Being part of the Lienhaber clan meant something, if not everything. A family surrounded by whispers and legends, they carried many sobriquets. But the most enduring of them all were Sons of the Sword and Heirs of Darkness. These titles had been forged in the crucible of a legacy, the esoteric art of infusing swords with dark mana. And at the heart of that tradition stood a symbol, the Vanquisher, also known as the Black Blade of Domination, a fearsome weapon passed down to the family's destined heir. Yet, none of that mattered much to Chinyu. Not now. Not when simply swinging a practice sword left his limbs aching and breath ragged. There were other traits of the Lienhaber bloodline more useful to him. Wealth, for example. The family wallowed in money. He could throw coins around without anyone batting an eye. After all, he had already inherited the infamous title of Brat of the family. If he needed anything, he could ask Lona. But as he tried to rise from the training mat, his body failed him, too frail, too brittle. Just moments earlier, Lona had entered the drill room, carrying a tray. She had brought water, a towel, and the wooden sword he'd requested. Seeing her, he beckoned her closer. As she approached, tears welled up in her eyes. "I knew it," she muttered, her voice trembling. He blinked in confusion. "What are you even thinking?" he asked. Then, leaning toward her, he whispered something into her ear. She pulled back slightly, her eyes wide. "Are you sure?" she asked. "They'll cost you a fortune, and they don't even serve any practical purpose." He raised a brow. "Am I hearing backtalk?" Terrified, she quickly bowed and promised to bring them by tomorrow. After she left, he sipped the water she had brought and sighed. Hopefully, those items would indeed arrive by morning. His stamina, he mused, was far too low. He'd have to train, not just in swordsmanship, but also to build his physical limits. Just then, a firm voice echoed through the training room. "Good morning, Master Knox." It was Rodwell de Ernerock, the major domo of the estate. As the head butler of the Knox Manor, he reported directly to Lord Theodore Lienhaber himself. Chinyu hadn't expected to encounter such a significant figure this early on. According to what he remembered, this stern man hadn't even considered Knox worthy of his attention. Had something already tipped him off? Setting his cup aside, Chinyu steeled himself. He wasn't defenseless. Let's see what cards he had to play. Using his gifted actor trait, he shifted his demeanor subtly and addressed the butler with an expression of polite boredom. "What brings you here?" Rodwell responded, "I come bearing orders from Master Theodore. Your presence is required at tonight's dinner." Chinyu's heart skipped. He didn't know anything about this dinner, let alone enough about the person he was now supposed to be. "You must be joking," he muttered. The butler, undeterred, replied, "Master will be disappointed." Inwardly, Rodwell wondered why such an invitation had been extended at all. He then added, "Miss Talia von Steeliner will be joining us. She is arriving for her nightly training." That name sent a ripple through Chinyu's thoughts. Talia, the very girl who, in the original story, would be the blade that brought an end to Knox's corruption. Down the road, she would be the one to pierce his heart with righteous steel. That evening, the long dining hall shimmered with candlelight as the family gathered. Chinyu walked in slowly, joining the banquet in awkward silence. His twin brothers, Hats and Alan, didn't waste time. Well, Alan said mockingly, "Lo and behold, Major Dunce has blessed us with his presence." Hats leaned back in his chair with a grin. "I can't believe he still considers himself a Lienhaber." Then, turning to one another with theatrical sarcasm, they added, "We heard he beat the maid and the butler the other day. No consequences, of course." Each jab hit harder than the last. Though these events had never actually occurred under his watch, Chinyu could feel the weight of the reputation he had inherited, one he now had to live with, or perhaps redeem. Just then, the air shifted as Lord Theodore Lienhaber strode into the hall with measured elegance. His presence commanded silence. In his tow was Talia von Steeliner. With grace and discipline, she greeted everyone in turn. Lord Theodore's voice rang deep and clear. "Miss Talia is here for her training. She will be staying with us for a while." He paused. "Let's extend a warm and cordial welcome." There she was, the girl whose path was bound to cross and clash with his. The girl who, by fate or design, would one day stand as his executioner. But right now, she was merely a guest, a trainee, a noble presence among wolves. Chinyu felt the surreal weight of it all. This was no longer a game. He was no longer a player. He was a character bound by bloodlines, prophecy, and fragility. The dining room buzzed around him, but his thoughts were elsewhere, already preparing for what lay ahead. His father, seeing him present at the dinner, looked surprised. He hadn't expected Knox to show up, but there was a distinct flicker of pride in his eyes. Without further comment, he gestured for everyone to begin the meal. The family began eating, the quiet murmur of cutlery the only sound until his twin brothers broke the silence. They turned to their father with anticipation. The Elydian Academy enrollment is approaching, one said. It's time to decide who among us will be joining. Lord Theodore Leanhaber leaned back, considering. Yes, he finally said, the time has come to make that decision. Shinyu, now inhabiting the body of Nox, knew that the Elydian Academy wasn't just prestigious, it was central to the events of the inner lunatic world. The Academy was where future powerhouses were forged, and those enrolled would become key players in the coming battles against demonic forces. If he wanted to survive and build alliances, he had to make it in. His father explained that the Academy, in its effort to prevent internal aristocratic cliques from forming, only accepted 3 members per noble family. Their elder 2 brothers had already secured their places, meaning only 1 spot remained. Shinyu understood immediately. If he wanted reliable allies and influence, he had to win that place. Lord Theodore added that the candidate would be chosen using the time-honored Leanhaber method. A duel? Shinyu asked, already knowing the answer but playing his part. His father was surprised. So, Nox is taking interest? Interesting. He confirmed that there would indeed be a duel, to take place 1 month from today in the drill hall. One of his brothers scoffed. If you want out, you'd best not show up at all. The other chimed in, laughing. With that delicate frame and those callous-free hands, what's the point in even trying? Shinyu sipped his wine, unfazed. Knowing who my rivals are gives me a strange sense of optimism. His brother slammed his fist on the table. How dare you imply you're on par with us? Shinyu thought to himself, Elydian Academy is just another hurdle. If I need to jump, then so be it. Out loud, he retorted calmly, if I'm attending the Academy, then naturally, I'll be ranked above you. The statement left his elder brother stunned. Lord Theodore eyed him sideways, sensing something unfamiliar in his once-disgraced son. Talia, observing the conversation, tilted her head with curiosity. What gives you such confidence that you'll be enrolled? She asked, intrigued. Shinyu was taken aback that he had caught her attention, the last thing he wanted right now. But the damage was done. Later that night, in his study, Lord Theodore glanced through the documents spread before him and addressed Rodwell, the head butler. You were right. There is a change in Nox. I've never seen him like this. Still, it's making things quite interesting. Keep an eye on him. The next morning, Shinyu began his training. As he jogged around the estate, the maids gasped and exchanged whispers. Is it true? He's really training in the drill hall. It must be because of the duel. Shinyu overheard all of it and wondered if eavesdropping was one of his hidden traits. Either way, he ignored the chatter. His current goal was to improve his stamina. In this game universe, one couldn't even initiate the genius sword skill with stamina below 4%. Right now, his was pitiful. After a long session of running, it ticked up by only 0.1%. His penalty traits halved his stat growth. This meant he needed to work 4 times harder than a normal character. His maximum stamina was capped at 15%, but that problem was for later. Back in the drill hall, Lona entered, holding a tray. Here are the items you ordered yesterday, Master Nox, she said nervously. Shinyu raised an eyebrow. She was more efficient than he expected. Looking down at the items, he saw them. Venom of the 3-headed snake, reminder fairy springwater, a golem's nucleus, and a scroll of rapid stamina growth. All of them expensive. All of them dangerous. Lona, anxious, asked, why do you need these? They're highly poisonous and not cheap. Shinyu smiled faintly. Yes, they're poisonous if you don't know how to use them. Without hesitation, he opened the vial of venom and gulped it down. A system notification immediately flashed before him. Warning, you will die in 10 minutes. But beneath it, another line appeared. Stamina plus 50. Next, he ingested the golem's nucleus. His body began to petrify slightly, but it also maximized his defensive power. There was an additional hidden effect. When taken together, the golem's nucleus neutralized the venom. Not only that, but it lifted the curse of frailty, the very trait that had shackled his body. As expected, it worked. Lona, panicked, rushed to him. Are you all right? Please, say something. Should I call Mr. Rodwell? But Shinyu was focused. That wasn't the only effect he intended to activate. Without a word, he began to unbutton his shirt, much to Lona's horror. Master Nox, she stammered. Moments passed, his breath steadying, his vision clearing. His stats updated. The curse of frailty was removed. He stood taller than before, the weight of weakness slipping from his shoulders. For the first time, he didn't feel like a burdened imposter trapped inside a fragile vessel. For the first time, he felt capable.